So this week's blog, the first question is consider how you would function as a manager with your organizational structure. So currently I am functioning as a nurse manager, and I think I do pretty well most days. When I took the leadership skill assessment tool, I found it very, very interesting and pretty dead on, quite frankly. When it talked about the administrative, I scored moderate. That wasn't surprising because there was a lot of elements of details, and I am not the person that loves details. I have a saying at work, and people repeat it back to me. It's meat and potatoes hold the gravy. So sometimes I can get focused on the big picture and sometimes forget to put the details into action. On the interpersonal skills, I scored the highest. It was very high. That was my highest performing area, which is not surprising. Interpersonal skills with managing people is so important. Having tactics to know your people and having the emotional intelligence to really understand where they're at. You can't expect them to be somewhere that they're not or that they never will be. So I'm surprised by that. Conceptual skills, I was pleased to see that it was a 25, so it was in the high range, so that was exciting. So I think as a manager, I do well most days. Definitely there's some areas of opportunity. The skills that I would use to get needed resources such as staff. So I think you use all of your skills, and I'll tell you why. First of all, when people ask for resources, you need to know, are you asking for a Band-Aid or do you need me to stop the hemorrhaging? So you got to figure out what they really, really need. So you have to do very well in your administrative skills. You have to know what your people do. You have to understand what they truly need. Do you have the tools that you need to do your job? You have to have interpersonal skills, the ability to, there's a difference between communicating and broadcasting. So depending on what their needs are, sometimes I will walk up to them and communicate, hey, help me understand what is it that you need. Or broadcasting is, to me, email communication. So understanding what communication tools to use when. And then the conceptual skills, that's the global piece of knowing what the problem is. Sometimes people will ask me for a solution for a Band-Aid. For instance, somebody was like, hey, can you help me understand how I can track these EEG results? And I had her show me what she was doing, and instead of giving her a medical assistant to help her with that, what we needed to do was go to HIM and let them know that they weren't releasing the results the way that they were supposed to, that there was a breakdown at the our HIM is human information management. Basically, it's medical records. So it was a problem at medical records, not a problem with being understaffed with medical assistant support. So again, are you asking for a Band-Aid or do you want me to stop the hemorrhaging? You got to know the difference. So the article that I chose was about pediatrics. So of course I was super, super excited to open it. It's called Implementation of a Transdisciplinary Team for the Transition Support of Medically or Socially Complex Youth. So these are your pediatric patients who have high medical needs. They're medically fragile, and these are the pediatricians that are wanting to hand off to the adult world. This is very scary, both for the child, for the family, and for the care team involved. So this is something we actually talk about at my work and how can we augment this process. So I really enjoyed this article. So this article really highlighted how the transdisciplinary team approach uses skills such as collaboration, support, learning, and compromise within a trusting and respectful environment. And having that approach creates this shared dynamic where the responsibility is shared for the continuous learning of everyone involved. So I think that really speaks to leadership. You have to have that supportive environment where people can collaborate and be very transparent. Sometimes I call my office Vegas. I'm like, hey, all right, close the door. We're in Vegas. You have to be respectful. You can't be insubordinate, but I need you to be transparent and truthful. And some of this transdisciplinary approach, the skills that make it very meaningful kind of work very well with leadership. So I appreciated that article and what it could offer to my leadership toolbox. With working with different team members, the ones that I work with that I feel are very valuable and you have to have really, really good skills working with are your management peers. Knowing who your peers are. We have practice managers in the ambulatory world, so I'm a nurse manager, there's a practice manager, and knowing who I report to. So I report to a director, an executive director. I have a solid line to nursing and I have a dotted line to ambulatory. So knowing your solid and your dotted lines and your org structure are very important. Working with your human resources teams, your HR business partner becomes your best friend. You have to work well with patients and their families. If you don't have the interpersonal skills to sit down with someone who has a complaint, and guys, it's going to happen. We all know that. But we need to go in and say, hey, you had a difficult appointment. Tell me what happened so that I can make this better and we can come to a solution. And we have to work well with our direct reports. I don't think anybody goes into management wanting to manage their team behind a closed door. So those are the team members that I think you have to work very well with. When looking at organizational structures, vertical versus horizontal, we have a vertical org structure, and I like that. Actually, in our email, when you email somebody, you can click on a box and see the whole org structure and where they play into it. You can see what the chain of command is for that person. So if you were to email me, you would see that you would see my direct report, you would see her direct report, and so on and so forth, all the way up to the CEO. So I personally like a vertical org structure. I've always had a vertical org structure. I like for things to be clearly spelled out. I don't want to wonder who reports to so-and-so, who, I like knowing what my expectations are and who to go to if there are problems. So I hope that I've answered all the questions, and I hope everyone is enjoying this class. Thank you and have a good evening.